This is Gradowski of WeAreChange.org at the busiest intersection in the world, Tokyo, Japan. And I'm joined by Mark Abela, who's an economist, and he's been living here for 25 years. And in this video, we're going to break down very important, amazing facts that I never heard before. Now, Mark, how do you explain what's happening in Tokyo right now?
Well, you have the population is waking up slowly but surely to the fact that the Japanese government is not working for them. Now, who does the Japanese government work for is a different discussion, and I think they still have to wake up to the fact that the real Darth Vader of the century, of the planet, is unfortunately Washington. Japan was transformed into a colony, an official colony in 1945. I know it's not the polite way to put it, but it became an unofficial colony, a parking lot for the U.S. military. So first of all, the fact that Japan has never been invested in wars since 1945 is ludicrous. They've been spending a huge amount of money over the last 70 years. Now, granted, that money was not spent on Japanese projects. All the money, all the military spending has been kept in order to help fuel and support American activities, whether that be in Iraq and Afghanistan. Japan has always been present. They still remain in the top 5 list of countries that spend a lot of money. Now, over the last year, pretty much, Abe, who's back, wants to spend even greater amount of money on military. What a lot of people fail to understand, unfortunately, is that money will still go for this increasing hegemony that the U.S. is bringing on the planet. And a lot of them are waking up to the fact that something is wrong. I don't think they understand how wrong it is and how little there is at the end of the day for them in that equation.
Yeah. And as we're talking right now, there's major protests happening in Japan against a new U.S. Marine Corps base that's going to be built in Okinawa, that's going to be destroying the coral reef as well. But there's also a lot of fascinating news and information just about the social and economic position here, because as we know, Japan is not doing that great economically at all.
Well, Japan now suffers from 3 precise weight on its shoulders. First of all, it's an extremely robotic, extremely highly taxed country. They have multi-layers of taxation, which really suffocates the population. The country is also indebted in such amounts that the central bank has no choice but to monetize the debt. And what that does is, what they do at the end of the day pretty much is, they inflate the currency in order to buy up all these debt instruments and put them on their balance sheet. The third layer of problems comes from the fact that since Japan is a colony of the U.S., or at least has been transformed into a parking lot to the U.S. military, Japan is locked into buying a lot of American-based debt instruments in amounts that would dwarf, what a lot of other countries have even as a GDP. As a result, that puts a huge amount of pressure on the population. As you can see, all of them are overworked. They work 5, if not 6 days a week. They have very little in the way of holidays in terms of free time. That translates into a society that loses in speed, loses in integrity, and the aggregate of problems is now transforming into a society where people are too tired to build families, to lead healthy lives. Suicidal rate also has been kept in the top 10. They have 30,000 suicides a year. They've beaten 30,000 for the last 14 years. So that's 420,000 suicides in the last 14 years alone. This number alone dwarfs both Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. So the degree of damage done by taxation and by debts and by the way the U.S. treats Japan dwarfs even the worst bombing in the entire history of humanity. So I think it's time a lot of people stop and pause and reflect on what's happening. I think a lot of think tanks in the U.S. also fail to understand what's really happening. The fact that Japanese people are lied to constantly on TV, that they fail to make sense of what's happening, why the government doesn't seem to be working for them, is one thing. I only wish that a lot of think tanks abroad in the US and Europe will also wake up to the damage currently the Washington Empire, the Darth Vader of Washington, is bringing to a lot of foreign countries. They now have, 800, 900, depending on who does the accounting, probably have somewhere north of 900 military bases around the planet, most of which find their sources in Asia. So as a result, they pretty much control the entire planet, and now they want in on the small empires left around the globe. And I think this recent move of the Japanese government increasing its spending is nothing but a step in that direction of helping the U.S. grab even further and move even deeper into the soul of the planet, its desire to actually have world dominance, worldwide control.
And the effects socially here are just so broad and so huge. I mean, Mark has been doing an amazing job just breaking down just the social conditioning that people are going through here. I mean, we just walked through a mall, and Mark just broke down everything that has been happening here with just the way people act, what people wear, just the kind of the exploitation and kind of materialism of just like trying to be outside of not just yourself, and you see those kind of a massive effects. How would you break it down for like the viewer who is not here in person, who is not walking around here with you? How would you break this kind of social conditioning down?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that the problem that Japan faces is not only a Japan-centric problem. Every country on the planet, every single location goes through the same predicament, and the challenge is it's only, shades of gray, if you will, at the end of the day. What's happening in Japan now, you can identify it in France, in New York, and other locations. Now, Japan is deeper into that very problem, and it creates a society where a lot of people, unfortunately, have a very high degree of loneliness. You can feel in people a sense of helplessness. They're waiting for someone to show up and call them. They're waiting for something to happen, and that something never shows up. And I think in terms of labor also, they are so overwhelmed with the amount of labor, the amount of work that they have to face every day, that it leaves very little room for love. And when I say that, I mean it in with the most amount of affection I can have. But when people are too tired, when the government are crushing societies almost to a level where people don't have any more free time, they stop loving themselves, and that translates into a lack of love and empathy and sympathy for the rest of the people around them. And I think you're starting to see that in a lot of cities around the world. I don't want to make it sound as if Tokyo is the only place where it's happening. I see it happening in Paris. A lot of food habits, cigarettes, alcohol. I hope you will forgive a lot of bad habits, a lot of poor caring of self is taking place, and it's very destructive. And I think Japan is just going faster than a lot of other places, and that translates into a society that's not really healthy. And what scares me is I think the less healthy society is, the easier sometimes it is to get societies to do the wrong thing. So in effect, I think we really have to bring as much sanity back to the table as possible very quickly, because if we allow the distortion to go further, we're going to land with an entire planet where people are so upset that the revolutions of 1800s, if you listen to what happened, for example, in France, 1780s or 1770s, people were chopping heads with guillotines. I mean, I don't know how much you would need to push me for me to say, yeah, let's just chop that guy's neck and let me see some blood rolling. I would never do it. You would have to push me to an immense extent for me to actually agree to that as a solution. I'm afraid that, unfortunately, if we keep on pushing on population so much, at some point the entire globe is just going to snap, and we're going to see a massive revolt. I just don't know when, but I think we're due for a reset, the Control-Alt-Delete on a lot of societies out there, and Japan is unfortunately deep in that tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, just walking around here, you see kind of the harsh economic conditions forced upon a lot of people here, just being brought out in kind of the social aspect. I mean, Japan has one of the lowest birth rates in the entire world for a reason. People here work themselves to death, and there's actually an official name for that itself, and it's just been incredible and fascinating just walking around, experiencing it, seeing it, living it, and just talking to locals like yourself who have been going through it for the last 25 years. Is there any other kind of last comments that you want to leave people with kind of understanding Japan in the greater context?
Well, first of all, I would encourage people to travel as much as possible. I think the planet is like a huge book, and every travel you do is like reading a new page of that book. I think that was Gushin who's saying that, and I think it helps put back the puzzle of the planet back into pieces. I think the media also does a really poor job at helping people understand what's really happening. So they will talk about the suicide, they will talk about the the birth rate and all these things, but they will always not go that extra mile to explain what's really happening, why this is happening. And I think traveling helps explain that. So I think it's time a lot of people start to put a lot of important discussions back on the table. I think it's important also that we move away from a lot of these state-owned media, because currently the way the media is structured, the interests are not unfortunately in the hand of the consumer. It's not in the hand of the people who actually watch the TV. Most of these channels are paid for and bought and paid for by a lot of interests that most of which find their roots in Washington and the way the U.S. controls the planet. So the entire, even the language I speak to you now. I mean, we're in Tokyo. What language am I speaking to you? I mean, I'm not saying it's too late, but the entire planet is now speaking the Empire, the Darth Vader language is the language that we have now welcomed as the main language of the planet. So it's time we sit down. It's time we sit down, and I think the entire planet needs to have a really strong discussion with itself in order to make sure we leave, a sound and safe and clean planet for the next generation.
Now, Mark is an amazing economist, but even better tour guide who's been taking around us all these amazing, wonderful places. Where can people find out more information about you?
Well, I'm connected to a lot of the Liberty think tanks in Asia and in Tokyo as well. There's a club called the Japanese for Tax Reform, with whom I spend a lot of time, and you can find me there. Also, there's a Tokyo Tea Party. I encourage people to do a little bit of research on the web. And it's a Tea Party not as per the Sarah Palin kind of vibe in the US, but a Tea Party a lot closer to the events of 1773 in December, when the guys were actually in Boston trying to fight the invasive UK behavior. So I'm easily found on the web. Tokyo Tea Party, Japanese for Tax Reform, a lot of the think tanks. We also have a lot of different discussion groups in Tokyo. So if you're in Asia, if you're in North Korea, if you're in Korea, if you're in China or other places, Malaysia, make sure to get in touch. And we have a lot of good people to talk with and try to get this discussion back on the table.
Amazing. The links will be in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark, for all the great information. And again, you're getting news and information that you will not get anywhere else. A true, real, independent media outlet. If you like it, support it, click like, click the share button, and also don't forget to subscribe. We're going to have a lot more videos coming your way here from Tokyo, Japan.